Con, ready?
Yeah.
Then I shall begin. Ladies and gentlemen, as the world's moral and economic hegemon, the United States of America cannot permit the perpetuation of an economic system and policy which principally reduces the United States of America can compete internationally, and which reduces the quality of life of workers in America, and which also restricts the rights of workers and employers to forge their own contracts. For this reason, the AF is proud to say that we resolve that the minimum wage should be abolished in the United States of America. Now, we have 4 contentions, so let's get right into them, waste no time. Now, our first contention is that creating an artificial floor for workers' wages principally prices workers out of a job market and infringes upon a business's ability to maintain a profit. Here's the issue with an artificial floor, judges. An artificial floor is just that, artificial. It can principally not take into account, conceptually not take into account, the state of all businesses in America, the state of all industries in America, etc. So, what's the result of this? The result of this is that certain businesses, small businesses particularly, because they don't have access to the same large economies of scale that large corporations do, are going to essentially be unable to hire workers, thus not only stunting their ability to grow economically, but also just thus stunting people's ability to get a job at a certain price point or a job period. What's a good example of this? What's some evidence of this? For instance, in the Northeast, it's illegal to pump, in some states in the Northeast, it's illegal to pump your own gas, right? You have to have someone pumping it on your behalf. You must have someone at the gas station working to pump it. Gas station is not, you can't offshore a gas station, so the workers must be paid the minimum wage in a gas station. There is no alternative. Gas stations in the Northeast run an average of a 3% profit margin with the current minimum wage system, and 25% of gas stations go out of business within the first year, many business owners citing the minimum wage and their ability to afford workers as a big issue in their ability to afford their operation of their company within the first year. So clearly the impact of this is that we're going to have less people working and less businesses succeeding. Now, our second contention is that a maintenance of a minimum wage does not increase workers' income, but rather increases the amount of workers working part-time. Judge, here's the thing. The AF believes in a principle we refer to as economic entropy. You cannot simply wave a magic wand of a governmental mandate and state that there is now more money in circulation, the workers have more money. Businesses have a finite amount of money which they can spend on workers and their wages. Therefore, they have to compensate with for the wage increase in some way. One of the ways they can do this, other than firing and not hiring workers, is by cutting them down to part-time work. What is some evidence of this? In California, statewide, once the minimum wage was increased, within the first month, relatively quick impacts, 300 to 330,000 people were either shifted from full-time to part-time work or fired entirely. In addition, in the city of San Diego, an example of it being unaffordable, the restaurant industry alone dropped from 5,200 new full-time jobs a month to 1,300 new full-time jobs a month produced for the city of San Diego. So it is clear that because these jobs are being demoted to part-time en masse across the country, what's going to happen is that people are going to have less social mobility, and their jobs part-time, because they're part-time, are lower on the corporate ladder, and they will not be able to provide for their families as well. Now, our third contention is that the minimum wage is not necessary to maintain workers' ability to bargain a wage and to protect workers' rights. The fact is, Judge, that unions do a majority of the negotiation on behalf of low-level workers in this country and in all countries around the world. What are some international examples of this? Sweden, Norway, etc., Denmark, Israel for a long period of time. All countries, Israel particularly with similar economic makeup of America, they did not have a minimum wage for a while, and instead unions negotiated the salaries for workers. For instance, in Norway, average income is $25 an hour, and Scandinavian countries particularly are known for having the highest level of workers' rights internationally, and Norway has a $50-something thousand GDP per capita. The other nations mentioned have a 40-something or high 30-something thousand GDP per capita. So clearly they're economically thriving and having healthy workers without the minimum wage existing. And our final contention, even if you're not to not believe the economic arguments, which you should, we have plenty of evidence, but even if you're not, the point that ties us together is that the minimum wage is a violation of a principle of freedom of association and freedom of labor, principally because a government regulating a contract is a government violating a contract. Why? Because they are restricting in one way or another a worker's ability to bargain, and they are restricting the terms of a contract negotiated between a worker and employer, thus infringing upon their rights. Thank you. I now stand down for cross-examination.
Oh, Sam, set the 2-minute timer for cross.
Do I have time? I can do it. Sorry, can I just set time?
Yep.
Sure, okay, thanks.
All right, Judge, you ready? Opponents ready?
Indeed.
All right, then I'll begin cross-examining now. So in your second contention, you stated that in California, 300,000 workers became part-time because of the minimum wage?
More specifically, just to clarify, businesses took some level of measure, either shifting to part-time or firing, cutting back their hours,
yes,
etc.
Yes, but just to clarify, this is just in California, right? Not nationwide.
Well, California is just an example. Nationwide.
Well, do you have other examples of nationwide?
One second. Let me finish. For instance, in New York, when the minimum wage was raised many years ago, we also saw a similar trend in the 1980s. Other international...
Do you have evidence to back that up?
Yeah, the trend.
The trend, who conducted, where do you get this trend from?
Just the simple statistics. In New York in the 1980s, after the minimum wage
Where'd
was
you get
increased
this? Where'd you
proportionally-
get these statistics from? That's what I'm asking.
Bureau of Labor Statistics reports. You can just look at statistics reports over time. Now, furthermore, wait, if you don't mind, can I just clarify a thing about California? California is just an example of a case study. It's the most populated state in America. It has a wide diversity of industries. So here's the thing. When we see a minimum wage increase there, that's indicative of a principle that an artificial floor
that's enough.
restricts businesses' abilities.
So another question you said, in your third contention, you says that the minimum wage is irrelevant because unions negotiate for workers, which
I didn't
means
say it's
that-
irrelevant. I said it's not necessary. But
Okay, so it's not. You said it's not necessary because unions negotiate for workers themselves, so they didn't negotiate for themselves, right? You said
I said unions do a lot of negotiation for workers internationally in countries that don't have minimum wage.
internationally, but we're talking about the United States. And how many unions exactly are there in the nation?
Now, here's what I can tell you. There are hundreds
Are you aware
of
that unions are illegal in Texas? Are you aware that unions only exist in like majority of the
You
Northeast?
can't illegally. You have freedom of association under the First Amendment. So if it was illegal in Texas, that would be probably unconstitutional.
But
And
are you
furthermore,
aware
a vast
that
majority of
unions-
states are actually heavily, even politically, donated
That's
to by
not the
unions.
question I'm asking. Are you aware that unions can negotiate for every person in the country if we abolish the minimum wage?
Here's what I can tell you. I can tell you that internationally, in countries
Internationally, but we are talking about the United States right now. We're not talking about Denmark, Sweden. We're talking about the United
here's
States.
the issue. Because we do not have an example of abolition of minimum wage in America, I can't give you an empirical thing that says, once the minimum wage was abolished, this many people started getting negotiated for by unions. But rather, what I can tell you is based on international trends, a similar thing would happen in America. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Judges ready?
Indeed, yeah.
Partners ready?
Yeah.
Of course.
Opponents ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Well then, my 4 minutes begins now. Hello, Judge. Today my partner and I will be negating the resolve. The minimum wage should be abolished in the United States, as not only will it cause detrimental harm to the already low-skilled and low-wage workers, but 60 million people dependent on the lower wages will lose their only source of income without it. Its loss will further result in an irreparable rift between those with and those without money. As moral humans, we cannot allow our society to be controlled by power-hungry businesses. The con side, which is us, can provide the people rights by giving them, by providing protection financially, by providing health, and by providing better life choices. We live in a world of sacrifice, but some people sacrifice more than others. When it comes to making choices for the 43 million people in poverty, it's often a sacrifice of one necessity for another. In 2015, 42 million people lived in food insecure households, meaning they didn't know when their next meal was going to come. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, people must satisfy different levels of needs for them to simply improve in life, and the lowest level of the pyramid is where those in poverty would reside. They don't have enough income to support themselves beyond basic human survival. This concept, plus a society without minimum wage, would create a cycle of poverty into poverty, because impoverished children cannot spend money on education and therefore taking away their chances at jobs. The result of America without a minimum wage would be a huge rift between social classes. In the lower classes and jobs, people will find their salaries being cut because their market wage is so low, and they no longer have the standard of pay to protect them. As their salary is lower, they become more impoverished in comparison to the rest of the country already getting median or higher paying jobs, therefore slowly creating a much larger gap between the social classes. On the other hand, the minimum wage sets a powerful foundation for those in the lower classes. Evidence from the Center of American Progress and Economic Policy Unit found they could actually shave off billions of dollars by increasing minimum wage while getting 1 million plus people off of government dependence. The result asks whether or not the minimum wage should be abolished, yet much evidence shows that actually keeping it would be the much smarter and economically reasonable move to do. A 2014 Congressional Budget Office reported even increasing the minimum wage up to $10.10 will lift up to 900,000 people out of poverty, but UMS has estimated up to a 6.8 million reduction in the impoverished. But keeping the minimum wage, or actually raising it, is also linked to lower mental health issues. According to the Council of Economic Advisors, raising wages increases productivity, it increases employee morale, and it leads to positive physical and mental health. Costco, Target, Walmart, and more have raised their wages because it's also correlated to more committed employees. And a living minimum wage standard is not only good for those below the poverty line, but Alan Manning stated in 2014, as the minimum wage rises and work becomes more attractive, labor turnover rates and absenteeism tend to decline. Many theories of business show that equal input and output and a series of rewards is a heavy motivator of work. A 2014 Berkeley study found that striking evidence turnover rates in teens and restaurant workers fall substantially following a minimum wage increase, meaning money provided by higher wages increase their want to work. The minimum wage leads to a higher work ethic through a motivation and rewards. Theories like McClellan's 3 needs show that wages are a great motivator as they provide a standard to rise above, and we all know that the American people want to better themselves. Without the minimum wage, the reward in jobs would only be limited to those in the middle and the higher classes, if there even is a system of rewards at all. The creation of a minimum wage would only spur the creation of a massive crevice between the social classes. Jobs will be pushed and given to the already privileged families at the sacrifice of the poor. By removing the minimum wage, we lose our only way and our best way of motivating employees to do better. It makes no sense to waste a good cause that could financially benefit all businesses and all people while providing rewards. And for these reasons, we believe you should vote con.
So the time is now.
Anybody wasn't you? Oh,
What?
she's last 14 seconds.
Okay. I'm ready for cross-ex. You ready?
Yeah.
Ready? All right. 1 second. I shall begin. All right. First of all, how are you doing today?
Sorry?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you for asking.
That's good. Well, you're in the quarterfinals, so you must be doing pretty well. Now, you talked about how the American people want to better themselves. Why on earth would we want to better ourselves by maintaining a status quo, which, as you said, has all these statistics of people being poor, people being food insecure in America? So how can you say that we should keep the status quo, and how can you say that the minimum wage benefits Americans when you cite all these statistics about people being food insecure, about people being driven apart in social
Well,
class?
evidence shows that if we were able to increase the
What
minimum wage,
evidence?
evidence from the American, I'm sorry, can I bring it up later? I swear I have it.
I believe you.
The academic research, where is it? Never mind, I'll bring it up
All right,
later.
let's
I'm
move
sorry.
back to the answer.
Oh, right. So the evidence shows that actually a nationwide census from over 2.5 decades show that by increasing minimum wage, whether it was state or federal minimum wage, it actually showed that it decreased unemployment while raising the minimum wage. So therefore, there has been shown no correlation that the minimum wage causes
got
unemployment.
it. Question, what about workforce participation rate? Do you have any statistics about workforce participation rate?
No, but we have like a lot of proof and... sorry.
All right. Now, you also talked about the social class gap, how people, would be more impoverished, less happy, etc., if a minimum wage is abolished, correct?
Yes, because
No,
no longer...
I didn't ask you why. I asked you if you said it. Now, question, which country has one of the closest social classes and distribution in the world? Which country has the highest human development index in the world? And which country polls for always top 2 and happiest countries in the world?
Sweden?
Norway.
Okay.
And Norway does not have a minimum wage, nor have they ever. And they have, and they're...
Where's your question? I'm sorry, where's your question?
So how can you suggest that the abolition of the minimum wage would drive these forces, would perpetuate these forces, when the country that does not have a minimum wage essentially is absent of these forces?
Okay, just like to clarify, does that mean Norway has unions? Is that what you're claiming? Norway has unions? Is that what you're saying?
Just answer the question.
Okay, well earlier I believe that you said that Norway has unions, and because
We
of
have unions too, but we have unions
okay,
too. But just
okay,
answer.
never mind.
Can we have 15 seconds?
It's con attack.
Con attack, right?
Yeah.
And then pro attack. Okay.
No,
Con-
then there's cross-examination.
Right.
But con attack, cross X.
Yeah, here.
Pro attack. Thanks.
Okay. George ready? Judges? Opponents ready? Partner ready?
Yep.
Okay, then I will...
No, I think we missed. I think you were supposed to class then. Whatever.
No, actually, because we're the
We're
pro.
pro. Yeah.
So you did
Yeah,
pro.
you're right.
So he's doing the con attack.
Yeah,
this
got
is
it.
contact.
Good. Just want to make sure we're
Alright, so just
Absolutely.
clear. Everybody's ready?
absolutely.
Alright.
Whenever you are.
I will begin my text speech.
Okay, can you just can I see that?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Ready?
Yeah.
Alright, then I
Go
will
ahead.
begin my text speech now. So, judges, I'd like to start by attacking our opponents' contentions by first stating that our opponents call the minimum wage an artificial floor, but judge, it is a baseline, a form of support for millions across the nation. Because judge, the fact of the matter is that more than 60 million people, including more than 15 million children, live in American households that depend on the earnings of a minimum wage worker, which is according to research by Oxfam America and the Economic Policy Institute released in 2014. And the EPI examined Census Bureau data about minimum wage workers in all 435 congressional districts and the 50 states. And because of this, we cannot abolish the minimum wage. Furthermore, our opponents state that the minimum wage increases the amount of workers working part-time. But as I stated in the cross-examination, our opponents bring up evidence from one state, and one state only, California. And then they make a claim based off of this. But judge, there are 50 states in the United States. Not one, but 50. So their claim is then invalid. Furthermore, our opponents stated once again that that unions negotiate for workers, so the minimum wage is not as essential. But once again, they bring up evidence from other countries and not evidence from the United States. They have no evidence on labor unions in the United States right now, and we cannot make claims based off other countries because, sure, unions may negotiate for workers in other countries such as Denmark, Sweden, Norway, but we're living in the United States right now, and we cannot abolish the minimum wage, while 60 million people are dependent on, just because unions negotiate for these workers in other countries. Furthermore, our opponents also stated in their fourth contention that the minimum wage can't allow workers to bargain. Well, without the minimum wage, workers have less ability to bargain because the fact of the matter is that without the minimum wage, employers or companies will be able to drive wages down to whatever they wish, because I will bring up an analogy example. Let's say company A is hiring for $5 and company B is hiring for $7. Now, our opponents might want to say that company A and B won't be able to drive wages down because of competition. That is completely false. Companies will have the ability to drive wages down because without the minimum wage, there's nothing protecting them, and because without the minimum wage, it gives companies the ability to drive down wages to whatever they wish because, quite frankly, there's many more people looking for work than there are employers looking for people to work for them. It's quite simple. It's the law of demand. There's a higher demand of jobs than compared to the supply of jobs that companies have. And because of this, companies can turn down workers that don't want to work for them, but eventually they will get people to work for them because people are willing to get whatever jobs they can. And because of this, we need to protect them with the minimum wage. So that's why, judges, I think you should vote for con. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Can we take 30 seconds prep time? All right.
All right.
One second, can I just take it?
Yeah.
I'll time you. There we go. Let's start with your just press
So,
the button.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Actually, I accidentally pressed it. But
Oh, it's all right.
158. It's
So,
the same thing.
nice weather we're having. Speaking of the weather, if you wanted to see if it was raining outside, would you go out and look if it was raining, or would you look at a weather report from 2 days earlier to check what the forecast was?
How is that relevant to the minimum wage?
Well, just answer the question.
Wait, can you repeat the question?
If you want to see if it's raining, would you look at the current state of the weather, or would you look at predictions, prior predictions?
Well,
Just I'm not talking about the minimum wage right now. Just answer the question.
I'm not
simply.
sure why I need to answer that if it's not relevant to the topic at hand.
Well, you're supposed to answer the questions asked. So let's just say neg is unresponsive. So any reasonable person would choose the former option. So how can you say that our case studies from two of the most populated states in the United States and the workforce participation rate being directly anti-proportional to the minimum wage?
Well, so first of all, you said it yourself. These are evidence from only 2 states.
But two of the most populated states. So how can you say that this evidence is less important than people's predictions that have not been proven?
Well, sure, they could be 2 of the most populated states, but when these 2 states compare to the entire nation as a whole, it's
So you're saying it's negligible?
Well,
or are you going to say,
in order
would
to make
you
a
tell
claim
the
about the country-
330,000 workers in California that their lives, their jobs are negligible?
No, I
because
fully
they
agree
can't
their lives are
support-
important, but are you forgetting the fact that 60 million people are dependent on the minimum wage?
Well, wouldn't you agree that if trends have shown that in countries where the minimum wage is abolished, countries with very similar economic structure to the
Very
United
similar
States,
economic structure. Are you aware of the population of these countries compared to the United States?
but you cannot prove that, and you have supplied no proof that this population factor
But you cannot
is
prove that
somehow
these trends
regulus.
can correlate to the United States.
I can, because
How?
we see these because how can you say that the trends in many states in the United States and trends internationally somehow are, I ask my question again, less important than people's opinions? Okay.
You're defending us. Do you want to finish,
So we're doing pro attack, pro defense, correct?
or- can you get this? Get a clock ready.
Can I see the?
What's this?
That's the mic. Put the mic down.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Recording you.
I apologize. All right.
Wait.
Is everybody ready? Oh,
Fine.
Sam, if you'd be so kind.
I'm kind.
This is your tactic, right?
Yes, it is.
So you're
Now.
pro attack.
Yes. Ladies, gentlemen, and judge. The main and consistent argument of the negative side throughout the first half of this debate has been that our studies regarding 3 exterior nations, 2 states within the United States, and workforce participation rates, statistics that they don't have, are somehow irrelevant and less important than quote-unquote expert opinion, just because we do not have a single statistic saying this is what will happen if we abolish the federal minimum wage. As my partner stated, there is no such statistic available for either side because the United States, since the foreseeable past, has had a minimum wage. Now, another big claim of theirs is that unemployment would somehow increase as the minimum wage raises and as the minimum wage stays consistent. But Judge, this is simply not true. Again, California Census Bureau data shows that in the city of San Diego alone, when the minimum wage was raised, job growth was reduced by 75%. And in the state of California itself, as my partner stated, 330,000 jobs were transferred to part-time or lost. Although workers may have a higher hourly wage, they actually have less money to spend and less money to provide for their families with the minimum wage because they can work less hours. Part-time jobs sometimes only have half or less of the hours of full-time jobs. And it has been proven by studies conducted by the University of Berkeley that the more hours someone works, the greater their probability of upward mobility is. Upward mobility is a core part of the American dream that they reject. Now, Judge, another claim of theirs was that the minimum wage helps with poverty. However, they themselves cited the drastic and horrible poverty statistics that we are living in, that is our reality today in the United States. So how can they say that the status quo is good for poverty? Instead, poverty rates in Sweden, Norway, and Scandinavian countries are much lower, and they are regarded as the best nations in the world for workers' rights. Now, they may claim that these countries and their results are not relevant to the United States. However, Sweden and Norway, as well as Israel, especially Israel, have extremely similar post-industrial economies to the United States, with similar supply and demand rates. So we can only assume that this data would be reflected in an abolition of the minimum wage. So, Judge, if you want to protect workers, if you want to protect small businesses like those in California and those in New York, where 50,000 jobs were lost in the 1980s, as shown by New York Census data, if you want to protect the little guy, then let's abolish this terrible policy that has ravaged this country for years. Thank you. I urge a pro ballot. I now stand down for cross-examination.
Judges ready?
Yeah.
Opposition ready?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Partner ready?
Yes.
Okay. Wait. Okay. Time starts now. Okay. What do you think is more?
Oh, sorry.
What would you consider more reliable? A census of the entire nation or one state? Yeah. So which
It's
one?
the census data, but we have United
I'm
States
just asking
census
a
data
simple
also.
sen- Do you believe that a national or a state census is more important in this round? What do you think is more effective?
Well, it depends on the census data. It depends
Okay,
on
let's
the
just imply that you
conclusions
said
drawn.
national because that's what any logical person would do because we want a
I
wider
disagree, but
variety.
sure.
Okay. Well, our evidence shows that a national census data show that actually increasing the minimum wage has been correlated to increases in employment. How would you argue your state census against our entire national census when it's been conducted over 2.5 decades?
All right, may I answer? So unemployment does not consider people that are not looking for jobs and that are satisfied on welfare. Unemployment is a statistic that only looks at people that are currently looking for a job, that register with the government for unemployment benefits. Now, workforce participation rate is the all-encompassing statistic that includes the aforementioned things. And workforce participation rate goes down when the minimum wage goes up, which means we have less workers.
Okay, here, we'll address that later in a different speech. But first of all, how do you suppose that you brought up unions? How do you suppose the unions are supposed to protect America if minimum wage?
Well, the unions are extremely strong in the United States. Unions are subsidized in every single state.
Do you have any actual evidence that it will apply in the United States, or is that just implying
No,
other countries?
the unions have existed in the United States since the time of the Industrial Revolution.
You mean up in the Northeast and not in the South?
No, there are unions in the South also. There are unions in every state
Other
in the
than the
United
fact that
States.
it's illegal in Texas, how do you suppose that it might work in the Northeast?
No, there are. That
That
evidence is not true. Constitutionally, as determined by the federal government, unions have to exist, and the federal government. Again, it's the First Amendment, freedom of association.
How do you suppose it will really help in the South when the population is so low in comparison to the Northeast?
Population isn't low in the South. Texas is the second most populated state
Right,
in
but
the
that's only a
nation.
portion of the South. So how
So
do
are
you
you
suppose
saying
that you're going to
they're
argue for the rest
like-
of the South?
What do you mean? In every state in the South, the unions exist.
Well,
You want to take any prep time?
I'm good. 2 minutes, correct?
Yep.
Just give me 1 second to set that, all right? All right.
So it's the defense case, right?
This is Pro's defense speech.
Okay.
Judges ready. George ready.
Yes.
Grace and Danny ready.
Yeah.
And I shall begin. Ladies and gentlemen, in regards to rhetorical and argumentative smoke billowing out of the Khan's case, I suggest we take the advice of a 42nd President Bill Clinton and not inhale. And I'm here to tell you why we should not inhale and rather clear the smoke and explain to you why their attacks are largely unsubstantiated on all accounts. Now, we can essentially group their arguments into, let's say, 3 sections. Their attacks in 3 sections. One, evidence about how impoverished workers are. Second, attacks that our comparisons to other countries are ineffective. And third, attacks on our evidence in comparison to their evidence. Now, firstly, let's just get into the comparison internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, judge, because this is a theoretical, because we are pushing for it, and because it does not exist, we can inherently not find an American statistic to support it. Therefore, we must still have some sort of objective basis, some sort of guideline to base it off. And other countries and other actual studies, although they may not be quite as perfect as, for instance, an actual American example, which doesn't exist, still provide an objective baseline and an objective guideline which is accurate to a very high degree, although not a perfect degree, and therefore it still stands despite that attack. And in addition, for instance, Israel, in regards to its economic proportions, 1%, top, bottom, 10% income, is very similar to America. Now, they also attack our arguments saying how impoverished people are, how dependent people are on the minimum wage. Ladies and gentlemen, judge, I urge you to understand that that is in the status quo. They are themselves proving and stating, they themselves are stating that the minimum wage is insufficient in the defense of workers' rights and insufficient in the defense of workers' incomes. And therefore, our evidence about Sweden, Norway, etc., having higher worker wages outweighs very simple statements about how people are impoverished in America because that's caused by the minimum wage. They also attack our arguments. They also attacked our argument about less ability to bargain and unions. They said unions are illegal in America. Well, the First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees freedom of association, and a vast majority of states have unions, and 13% of American workers are actually unionized. That's all workers, including white collar, so unions are strong in this country. Furthermore, they said they won't have less ability to bargain. Well, it's not true because their ability to bargain is literally restricted. Thank you very much, and I urge an aft ballot.
In March of 2016, Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania stated this: I support raising the minimum wage because it's the fair and right thing to do, and it will support local businesses, create new jobs, and boost revenue by tens of millions of dollars annually while helping working families make ends meet. So, going off of that, we do agree that the minimum wage is insufficient, which is why we are arguing that we have to raise it. You see, Germany, if my opponents can argue from European countries, we're also going to bring up Germany. Germany has unemployment rate half the size of America's, and yet their minimum wage is $10.10, proving once again that raising the minimum wage can actually help lower unemployment, and as shown by Germany. And also a nationwide census across America that has been taken from over 2.5 decades of information shows that in over 60% of the cases, by raising either federal or state minimum wage, we have actually decreased the number of people unemployed across America, in the South, in the North, in the West, and in central states. So there's no discrimination whether or not we raise. There's no discrimination as to which states would be benefited if we were to raise the federal or state minimum wage. And our opponents, they did not address our health or our productivity contentions at all. They have completely left that out in the open. So I would like to emphasize that, according to EPI.org, it is shown that increasing the minimum wage helps productivity. It decreases mental illness. And the reason why the minimum wage is so important in this productivity is because the minimum wage is the minimum, as you can see. But every time we get a raise, it's seen as a reward, and that increases productivity positively. And it also helps increase health, because as we see that as our raises are given, we see them as a gift, and that just makes us even happier. So rather than being stressed out about work, we raise our dopamine levels, and we therefore decrease anxiety, and we also decrease depression. And for these reasons, I believe you should vote on.
Oh, sorry.
I don't have time.
What? How
Phone
come you
died.
don't have a
Phone
timer?
died.
Oh, can I borrow someone's phone for a timer?
Okay.
I
we have
really
the same-
appreciate it. Thank
We have
you.
the same case.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's see. Where's the timer?
Just a slide. Let me show you.
Oh, I see it. I
right
see it.
there.
I see it. Okay, 2 minutes, right?
So this is the pro-defense case.
No, this is the
No,
Summary.
so-
Summary.
pro summary conclusion. That was con summary conclusion? Pro con defense.
That's
Con defense.
Now, Judge, my name is Georgia Allender, and I'm here to explain to you why we have won this debate and to summarize and crystallize the key points in this argument. So, we win on international examples, because although Germany's unemployment may be lower than the United States, Sweden, Norway, and Israel all have lower unemployment rates than Germany. So their one example is less relevant than our three. They have not cited specific studies or sources for their supposed employment increasing when minimum wage increases evidence, which wouldn't make any sense, because then companies would have to hire fewer workers to compete with higher wages. It goes against the simple principles of supply and demand in economics. We have shown that workforce participation rate, which is more encompassing than unemployment rate, because it accounts for the people, all the people on welfare, not just unemployment benefits, shows that the workforce participation rate is inversely proportional to the minimum wage, meaning as the minimum wage has gone up, workforce participation rate is at a low in the past 10 years. So, Judge, we also win on the issue of workers' rights. They have not addressed our argument about the First Amendment. They have not addressed our argument about the workers' right to bargain for a lower wage. And the baseline does not help the worker. It prevents the worker from trying to get more hours. And they talked about the health benefits of raising the minimum wage. But this argument is just connected to the idea that minimum wage increases overall salary, which it does not, because workers have to work part-time job, have less upward mobility, and an overall lesser salary, because they have to work fewer hours and are laid off in greater numbers. So we have evidence from 2 of the most populated states in the United States, overall Census Bureau evidence,
3.
and we have international examples which show why not only are we stronger on the evidence, but the principles of this case. So please, I urge an affirmative ballot.
Everybody's ready? Everyone's ready?
Yes.
Grace, ready? Okay, then I'll begin my summary now. So, judges, I would like to begin by stating that our opponents, time and time again, they've used international comparisons, and they've said that these international comparisons are justifiable as a guideline, and they even stated themselves that they have no American statistic, which proves that this is all theoretical, which is risking 60 million people, including 15 million children, Judge. 15 million children are put at risk if we abolish the minimum wage. So judges, I ask you, why are our opponents advocating the abolishment of the minimum wage? What is their basis of this? They're advocating based off studies of 2 states out of all 50 states in the entire nation, and also 3 international countries, none that have which to do with the United States of America that we are currently living in right now. Also, we are risking putting all these millions of people into poverty if we abolish the minimum wage, Judge. Because if we abolish the minimum wage, judges, once again, because companies will drive wages down, we are further putting these people into poverty. Our opponents have also stated that the 60 million people that we've stated that are dependent on the minimum wage, that is the status quo, and they said that is not good. But the status quo with the minimum wage, if we keep the minimum wage, the minimum wage will eventually increase over time, as trends have shown. And because minimum wage will increase over time, and trends have shown, these 60 million people, they will benefit over time. And our opponents state that this is false, but actually it is true. And our opponents have also stated that unions will be able to protect the workers if they abolish the minimum wage. That is simply untrue. Unions won't be able to protect the workers. You know what will, judges? The minimum wage. So that is why we must keep the minimum wage in place. Because, in essence, we provide health, more jobs, more productivity, more money to the poor, and all they do is they offer risks and theories to harm the people of America as well as America's economy as a whole. So that's why, judges, I urge you for a calm ballot. Thank you.
Great debate, guys.
Okay, well, you guys are really good as always.
Thanks for judging, guys.